Hey everyone, hope you all are well. I'm beginning today with the Urban Decay eyeshadow primer potion. I'm adding a few swipes of this across the eye area, and then I'm taking the double-ended brush that came with the Urban Decay Metal Mania palette, and I'm using the fluffy side just to buff and blend that product into the skin anywhere that I'll be adding eyeshadow. And this will just to help our shadows apply nice and smoothly, blend nice and easily, and ensures they last all day long as well. Now, I've got no issues applying shadows directly on top of the primer. For me personally, they don't skip. I can move the shadows around the eye area with ease. But if you are having an issue, try tapping a little bit of translucent face powder down to set the primer in place. My eyes are quite dry, so they suck up any bit of moisture that comes their way. But apply your face powder and then your eyeshadows, and that way you're applying like with like, and you should get more of a seamless finish to your shadows. I'm taking the Metal Mania palette from Urban Decay again today. I feel over the years some of the limited edition palettes from Urban Decay have been a bit hit and miss, just quality wise. But this one for me is a hit. I'm really enjoying it so far. So the first shadow I'm starting with is called Sound Tower. It's a nice warm toned medium matte brown, and I've picked this shadow up on a Sedona Lace EB09 universal blending brush, and I'm applying the shadow into the crease. So usually I would go for a larger blending brush from the get-go and use something like this after I've applied a transition shade because it's smaller and I can be more precise with it. And it's actually just one that I find great for everything really. It does live up to its name. It's universal. I can apply the transition shade, although it takes a bit more time. I can add depth. I can use the side of it for applying a lid shade if I wanted to. It's really an all-rounder. So once I've gotten a light layer of that shade, I'm then picking up a little more, and this time I'm tapping it down on the outer corner of the eye, followed by the inner corner, and then I'm pulling the shadow up into and across the crease, connecting it down on the outer third of the eyelid. So I'm going for a soft spotlight look today, and I'm leaving a blank space in the centre of the lid. For the lower lash line now, I'm taking that same shade, this time on a small bullet shaped brush, and I'm running that shadow all the way down along the lower lash line, right into the inner corner, and then I'm making sure that it connects up on that outer edge. The next shade then that I'm taking is called Studio. It's a deeper shade than the previous one. It's more of a red toned brown and it's got a matte finish to it. I'm using this to add a little bit more warmth and a little bit more depth as well. So I am starting by tapping a little of this down on the outer edge of the eye, and then I'm using little back and forward sweeping motions to make my way up into the crease, and then I'm gradually going to use a mix of sweeping motions and windshield wiper motions to take this shade all the way across the crease and down onto the inner third of the eyelid. So once I've laid that colour down there, I can get to work on blending it out. So I'm just going to keep going over and back, just making sure to really buff and blend that shadow out so that it's nice and smoky. And if I feel that I've lost some of the intensity of that shade while blending, I'll add a little bit more and I'll just repeat the process. And you can do this as many times as you like to build it up in light layers and just keep blending and adding until you're happy with the finish. What I do to the top, I do to the bottom. So I'm taking a little more of that studio shade again on that small bullet shaped brush, and I'm smoking this all the way down along the lower lash line. So again, from outer to inner corner. I'm gradually making my way from light to dark, so the next shade I'm taking is called Road Crew. It's a deeper brown than the two that we've used previously, and it's more of a satin finish opposed to a matte, which I actually enjoy. Sometimes with the darker shades it can be a little harder to apply and blend for people when it's not matte. It does just make the process a little bit easier. When it's a satin finish, it's just that little bit more forgiving on the eyes. So it is a darker shade, so I've just picked up a smaller amount compared to the shadows before. It can be very easy to go overboard with the darker shades, so just start with a small amount and take your time. You don't want to cover up any of the work that you've done so far. Once I'm happy with how that looks, I'm taking a little bit more of Road Crew and I'm sweeping this down along the lower lash line from outer to inner corner. And when I was sweeping into the inner corner, I accidentally took it a little bit too low underneath the tear duct. I do like to keep that area somewhat light and bright. But to fix that then I'm taking up the brush that I used for concealer. It's still got a touch of excess product on it and I'm using this like an eraser, dabbing over the shadow to get rid of it essentially. And I have already set my base products, but I find because it's excess product that was sitting on the brush and not, fully liquid, it sits okay over the top. But I am setting it with powder though, and then we're good to go. So I'm blending a little bit more with that bullet shaped brush now, just so that everything is nice and seamless. So the next shadow I am taking is a nice black. This got a nice sheen to it. It's called Heavy, and I've picked this up on a Sedona Lace C-shaped brush, and I'm using this to tap the shadow down on the outer third of the eye from lash line up to the crease in a sort of C-shaped motion, and I'm doing the same on the inner third of the eye, creating that C shape again, just curving the shadow from lash line to lid to crease. Then I'm going to move back to my Sedona Lace EB09 Universal Blending Brush, and I'm running this over the edges of that shade Heavy, blending it out and pulling it through the crease as well. So I really took my time with this shade in particular. I wanted the look to be nice and dark and smoky. I build this shadow up in layers. If you did want it to be less, I suppose, dark and smoky and dramatic, and you wanted to have that brown peeking through a bit more and more of a neutral look, you could stop after the first application, but I did want a more dramatic finish, so I layered it. So I'm just repeating that process again of tapping down the C-shaped brush. I do this because it's more dense than the blending brush. The bristles are more tightly packed. So I am going to pack on more colour with this brush opposed to the blending brush. And then once I've got the shadow down there, I pick back up my fluffy brush and I just soften it out. For the centre of the lid now, I'm taking the shade Headbang. It's a shimmery warm brown, and I'm using the flat smudger end of the brush that came with the Metal Mania palette to apply this to the lid. And I didn't want to go overboard at first. Like I said, I wanted a soft spotlight. So I picked up a really small amount of this shadow and I used it dry, and I really didn't have enough of my brush because it's barely visible here. So I went in with a second layer with a bit of a heavier hand and I applied a little more. So I decided then that I did want that shadow to have a little bit more dimension. I wanted a small bit more of a sparkle. So I'm taking up the shade Spike Stud. It's a really intense silver, so I dipped the very tip of my pencil brush into it, and I'm now randomly just dabbing it down in the centre of the lid to add a touch more sparkle. For the waterline then, I'm taking this Kajal liner from Lancome. It's in a beautiful chocolate brown shade. I'm running this inside the eye, just coating the waterline. Then I'm going back to that small C-shaped brush and I'm using a touch more of that heavy shadow, and I'm just running this in the lashes, right in the lash bed, and smoking it ever so slightly underneath the lash line. And I'm adding some lashes then. The ones that I chose were the Eyelure 117 lashes. They're not too dramatic, but they do give a bit of a lift to the eyes, which is great. And then I'm using the telescopic mascara from L'Oreal just to blend my own lashes in with the false ones. And then I'm coating the bottom lashes too. And to finish off the look, I just used a small amount of my face highlighter on a pencil brush, ran this around the tear duct and under the arch of the brow, just to add a small little bit of brightness and a lift to those areas. And then that's it. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and found it helpful and easy to follow. If you did, do let me know, and I'll catch you all really soon.